It is the news Buckingham Palace has dreaded since the moment the Duke and Duchess of Sussex boarded a plane bound for California. The monarchy is now quietly preparing for the possibility of divorce. According to highly placed sources, a confidential blueprint is being drafted behind the ancient walls of the palace. A detailed strategic contingency plan for the potential dissolution of the marriage of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This isn't just speculation, it is allegedly a low-key, yet undeniably serious exercise in crisis management. Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to the channel. If you appreciate deep dives into the sometimes unsettling realities facing the world's most famous family, please do tap that like button and subscribe. Today, we must address the persistent, swirling rumors that the Sussexes are currently inhabiting radically different realities, and the unprecedented steps the palace is taking to manage the fallout of what would undoubtedly be a seismic event. The whispers have been getting louder, transforming into an audible hum across royal circles. The source for this extraordinary revelation, shared via Woman's Day, claims that the palace is not merely observing the situation, but is, in fact, quietly drawing up contingency plans in the event of a split. This is not a matter of wishing for it, but of bracing for the worst-case scenario. For the House of Windsor, preparation is paramount, especially when the potential consequences involve controlling the narrative surrounding a prince who has already authored a scorching memoir and a duchess who holds considerable sway over the global media. The cracks in the California dream. To understand why Buckingham Palace feels compelled to activate this highly sensitive planning process, we must look at the recent shifts in the couple's public positioning. For some time now, the narrative has focused on the Duke and Duchess, pursuing independent, parallel professional interests in Montecito. But the real catalyst, the moment the palace allegedly began to take these rumors seriously, came with Prince Harry's candid admission regarding the future education of his children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Harry, who has always maintained a deeply emotional connection to his homeland, publicly expressed a yearning for his children to experience a period of schooling in the United Kingdom. This seemingly innocuous desire for a traditional British education for his young son and daughter exposed a potentially fatal schism at the heart of the Sussex marriage. The insider reveals that should the marriage reach its breaking point, the prevailing thought is that Harry would inevitably push for a return to the UK. This is where the danger truly lies because, based on Meghan's own past public statements and her clear desire to establish a life independent of royal constraints in the US, there is a firm understanding that she won't want to come back from the US. This critical division, Harry's longing for his roots versus Meghan's commitment to California, is the schism that the palace strategists deem potentially dangerous. It shifts the entire focus of any potential divorce from a private matter to a high-stakes negotiation involving residency, titles, and, most critically, the future custody of the king's grandchildren. The blueprint of containment. Learning from Diana. The greatest fear of the monarchy is a repeat of the 1990s. A public, messy, and ultimately damaging divorce played out across the front pages of the world. The specter of Princess Diana's separation from then-Prince Charles, with its emotional revelations, tell-all interviews, and the ensuing media circus, still haunts the halls of Buckingham Palace. Therefore, the planning for the potential Sussex separation is allegedly modeled on the high-profile divorce of Harry's own parents, but with significant modern modifications. The source explicitly states that any divorce plans would look similar to the legal and PR strategy used during Princess Diana's separation. Only this time, the language will be tighter and the penalties for breaking it heavier. What exactly does tighter language and heavier penalties mean in the context of a royal separation agreement? In the 1990s, while Diana retained her title and access to the children, the agreement eventually broke down under the weight of her continued public activities and the occasional perceived breach of royal decorum. For Harry and Meghan, a modern agreement would likely involve ironclad non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, that are far more comprehensive than anything previously imposed. The penalties could involve severe financial repercussions tied to any future media ventures, book deals, or documentary projects that touch upon the intimate details of their life together. or, crucially, the inner workings of the royal family post-divorce. The monarchy must ensure that if Meghan walks away, she cannot leverage her insider knowledge for profit or public score settling. This new blueprint is designed to establish clear boundaries, ensuring that both parties, particularly the one remaining outside the fold, adhere strictly to the terms concerning privacy and public commentary. The strategic value of the Duchess title. Perhaps the most surprising detail emerging from these alleged contingency plans concerns Meghan's title. When Prince Harry and Meghan stepped back as working royals in 2020, they retained their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, though they agreed not to use their His/Her Royal Highness styles. If a divorce were to occur, one might expect the palace to seize the opportunity to strip Meghan of her remaining royal association. Historically, titles are often reviewed following a separation, as seen when Diana lost her HRH status but retained the title Princess of Wales. However, the palace is reportedly ready to make a highly strategic concession. The agreement would also allow Meghan to keep using her Duchess of Sussex title. Why this extraordinary generosity? The insider explains the calculation. The palace considers this a strategic move, fearing that removing it could trigger a media war. This fear is entirely rational. Meghan Markle, without a title but possessing the platform and media savvy she has cultivated over the last few years, could become a highly effective adversary. Stripping her of the Duchess title would be viewed by many of her supporters as a hostile, punitive act by the institution, potentially creating a martyr narrative that would dominate global headlines for months. By allowing her to retain the title, the palace subtly acknowledges her status and, more importantly, keeps a thread of communication and potential control. A duchess is still technically bound by certain expectations, even if non-working. The goal is to avoid handing Meghan a new reason to criticize the monarchy publicly, and to ensure she maintains a degree of decorum associated with the title she retains. This is a calculated risk, a preemptive move designed to buy peace and ensure that the narrative remains manageable during the transition. The custody conundrum, Archie and Lilibet. The most painful and complex element of any potential separation is the fate of Prince Archie, 5, and Princess Lilibet, 3. If Harry pushes for a UK return and Meghan refuses to leave California, the logistical and legal complications surrounding the children become immense. Archie and Lilibet are currently US residents and have spent their formative years outside the strictures of royal life. However, they are also 6th and 7th in line to the throne, respectively, and hold the titles of Prince and Princess. The palace's plan must above all address this transatlantic schism. If the agreement is indeed modeled on Diana's, it would likely prioritize joint custody, but the residency clause would be the battlefield. For the palace, the ability of King Charles III and the rest of the royal family to maintain a consistent relationship with his grandchildren is paramount. Harry's stated desire for UK schooling suggests a wish for the children to be integrated into British life, even if only partially. The contingency plans must therefore establish a clear, legally binding schedule for the children's time in the UK versus the US. This is significantly more complex than a standard divorce agreement, as it involves international jurisdictions and the constitutional roles of the children. It highlights the acute pressure the palace is under to ensure that if the marriage ends, the connection between the children and the crown does not. The overarching strategy, containment and control. The ultimate purpose of this low-key planning is not to encourage a divorce, but to ensure that if it occurs, the institution is prepared to control the narrative and minimize damage. The source emphasizes that the palace's posture toward Meghan must be one of calculated neutrality. Meghan must not be met with hostility. This is about containment. The monarchy has learned that attempting to publicly suppress or punish a former member often backfires spectacularly, generating international sympathy for the person cast out. Instead, the strategy is about facilitation. The narrative crafted by the palace must achieve two critical outcomes simultaneously. 1. Favor Harry's return. The story must position Harry's potential return to the UK as a natural, desirable homecoming. It must be framed as a choice driven by his deep connection to his family, his duty, and his desire for his children to know their heritage. This makes his reintegration smoother and more palatable to the British public. 2. Validate Meghan's choices. The narrative must respect Meghan's decision to remain in the US. This avoids painting her as the villain and reduces the incentive for her to retaliate via the media. Her choice must be presented as a mutual agreement to pursue separate professional and geographical paths. This approach is sophisticated and deeply cynical, prioritizing institutional stability over personal feelings. It is an acknowledgement that Meghan, whether inside or outside the marriage, represents a powerful media force that cannot be simply ignored or bullied. She must be managed. Preparing for both eventualities. The insider's final words underscore the gravity and necessity of this preparation. This is low-key planning, but it is happening. The palace sees a worst-case scenario and wants to be prepared. The worst-case scenario is precisely the dangerous schism mentioned earlier. A divorce where Harry seeks to return to the UK, while Meghan digs in her heels across the Atlantic, creating an intractable custody battle played out through rival public statements. The palace is planning for two distinct paths. Eventuality A, Meghan walks away. This requires the tight, heavy penalty agreement, the retention of the Duchess title as a peace offering, and a narrative that allows her to save face while simultaneously ensuring her silence on sensitive matters. Eventuality B, Harry comes back. This requires a clear, defined path for his return, potentially as a non-working royal who can provide stability for his children and support his father, King Charles, during a period of ongoing transition within the monarchy. The monarchy's goal is simple yet profound: to plan for both possibilities, ensuring that the institution remains intact and that the future of the royal lineage, embodied by Archie and Lilibet, is secured, regardless of the personal tragedy that may be unfolding thousands of miles away in California. It is a sobering thought, isn't it, that while the public watches the glamorous appearances and new projects, the most senior advisors in the royal household are mapping out the precise legal and strategic steps required to navigate the breakdown of a marriage that once promised to modernize the monarchy. This story reminds us that beneath the pomp and ceremony, the royal family operates with the cold, calculated efficiency of a major global corporation, always prioritizing continuity and control. What are your thoughts on this alleged strategic planning? Do you believe the palace is right to prepare for a split? And do you think allowing Meghan to keep the Duchess title is a clever move to ensure containment? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the extraordinary measures being taken by the monarchy. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe for more royal analysis, and we will see you in the next video.